Okay. You didn't do anything to this tape, did you?
No.
Okay. Just get back. I'd like to begin this segment talking about the '61 campaign. We've discussed a little bit about your return to Birmingham and sort of the political climate that you encountered when you arrived here. But it was, you determined that you would jump right in, as it were, early in '61 and became a candidate for mayor. Say a little bit about your decision-making process in terms of deciding whether to enter the race or not.
Well, as I briefly mentioned, I was referred to a general group of leaders, some from the retail segment of our population, some from industry. There was a gentleman named Hap Parker.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard that name?
For some reason I have, but I couldn't tell you why.
Well, he was head of the I can't think of the name of the entity itself, but great guy, and was very helpful to me. He had never known me, and he was one that I was referred to go see.
Mm-hmm.
But he was head of heavy industry.
Mm-hmm.
Connor Steel,
Mm-hmm.
TCI,
Mm-hmm.
now U.S. Steel, etc. Many others. Now probably just business council, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was referred to Hap Parker, and we just formed a friendship almost from the beginning. And as a result of that, I always had the support of these larger entities through Hap Parker primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was he maybe associated with the Chamber of Commerce, or?
no, well, I'm sure he was associated.
Yeah,
but,
right.
I just can't recall it, Doctor. The name. I had it on the tip of my tongue.
Well, it's not important. We can look it up later. But I think then the decision, of course, ultimately had to be yours and
Yes.
your family's. And
Well, one point I want to make is that the first election, where I almost made it and didn't, I had the very happy, satisfying support of so many of my classmates from the University of Alabama.
mm-hmm.
I shall always remember that. And from where I was raised in Norwood, and it seemed that they came to me and had great support. And but the one that cries out for statement is the great support I had from old friends and old classmates,
Mm-hmm.
former classmates.
Well, it speaks well of the ways in which people had regarded you, obviously, from your earliest days. That that they would still be supporters, and not only that, but ardent supporters. Let me.
Well, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but I think you're right.
Yeah. the thing that strikes me about this particular election, of course, is that from what we now know, it would appear that Art Haynes was the candidate being supported by Bull Connor and his associates in this race. And that, in other words, he had been picked, apparently personally by Connor, to leave where he was, where he'd been at, now I'm forgetting the name of the airline, the
Hayes.
Hayes.
Yeah, where he had worked at Hayes
Right.
in terms of security. He'd been a former FBI agent. His father had been a Methodist minister in the community, so he was well known
Right.
in that respect. But he was chosen, as it were, to be an ally. He was to be elected to be an ally of Bull Connor's on the commission, a 3-member commission.
Is
and
my
you're-
understanding.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And so he's in
I
the
do
race and would represent, I guess, your primary opponent. I mean, he's the one to beat if you're going to win. There is an initial election, a primary election, and should you have won the majority of votes in that, you would have been elected. But you didn't quite, even though you led the field, you didn't quite make 50%, as I'm remembering it.
That's correct.
Although you did lead by a considerable number of votes, and Art Haynes had finished second.
That's correct.
What's interesting, I think, about that particular vote, in retrospect, is that Bull Connor himself was reelected in that race by a very heavy margin, but was not able, I guess if you want to use the term coattails, he didn't have the coattails to get his candidate elected. You at least had taken enough votes. There must have been some people voting for Bull Connor who also voted for you, in my judgment, I guess.
I think you're right.
Numbers. And so the question, I guess, was...
I can name some.
The question then would be, you were perceived as more moderate, more progressive, however you want to, whatever term was being used at the time. The idea was that by voting for you, by supporting you, that people would be sending a signal that they were ready for some change in Birmingham. Connor, of course, represented no change in Birmingham. So I guess one curiosity would be, what do you think was behind some folks supporting you that first time out, and also apparently supporting Connor?
You're asking me?
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Yes, quite frankly, didn't think about it too much at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I did much later. I thought about it much, and much later.
Mm-hmm.
The fact was that it took a lot of passage of time, I suppose you'd say, for me to recognize from the standpoint of being realistic that people here in my hometown, Birmingham, Alabama, where my father was a sitting circuit judge, and a very popular one because he didn't have opposition other than one time when he, a later circuit judge, ran against my dad, but my dad prevailed. And then from that point on, he never had any opposition. So he was a very popular guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he got around like my certainly my sons are capable of doing. I've mentioned Tom Jr. I happen to have another son, Alan King, who is a probate judge now. Tom is, as I mentioned before, is a circuit judge, and Alan is one of the two probate judges. Mm-hmm. So I'm benefited by that and greatly proud of those sons and all of my sons. And anyway, sort of lost my train of thought.
What we were talking about was in terms of people supporting you while also supporting Connor.
Right. Well, that I had mentioned that I could name a few. One gentleman that comes to mind has long since been deceased, I'm sure. I've lost touch with him. There was a gentleman in the eastern section named Box, B-O-X. He operated a service station in Wahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Box, type person that knew his politics, very crusty person. I've been reminded of him in connection with recent trials in our city.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Mr. Box and I formed a friendship, and I just knew that Mr. Box was for me, and he was. But he just didn't seem to be the type of person that I would attract based on my public persona.
Mm-hmm.
And but I got in the habit of buying all my gas from him. I was covering the city all over the place, and so using up a lot of gas, and I always find it convenient to drop by and see Mr. Box, because he knew what was going on, in my opinion. And but he was a strong Connor man.
Mm-hmm.
And he made that clear, that he was a Bull Connor man from the word go. But he was also for Tom King.
Mm-hmm.
And
in that first election, the one that you came close to winning, that is, were some of the issues, as they would later be, about your service in Washington, that somehow you had, one would assume that perhaps that was an asset, not a deficit, to have been close to Washington, working for the Congress.
sure, you would think so.
But that seemed at some point to become a problem. Your association with Washington, was that an issue, you think, in that first vote?
Only in the runoff.
Yeah.
It was made an issue in the runoff.
So really, in a way, what might have happened is you surprised Connor and company by doing so well in that first
I think you're
time
right.
out.
Exactly.
And then they had to strategize about how they were going to block your election. That had things moved on in what would seem like a natural course, you would have gained votes in the second round of this race. And so the strategy had to be how to make sure you not only didn't gain votes, but how to take votes away from you.
You're very perceptive, Doctor.
And so how did they go about doing that?
Well, with what you already know, Judge, in point of fact, they played the race game And I was, it was very, very, this campaign has long since been over. I've long since come to rest over it. And I would not want to appear to be a bad loser 40 years later or whatever it's been. But for instance, I was subject of bad press, paid for press, advertisements. Like Tom King was sent down from Washington to integrate the schools. That appeared time and time again in the runoff election. This was ads were paid for by a former Major League Baseball player who's exceedingly well known. A local radio TV station. I had my campaign did not raise the money it was thought would be raised in the runoff election. And we had it tough raising that money, but we paid for an ad, a 30-minute program just before the runoff election the following day. And another one of those coffees that I had that I referred to earlier, that my wife and I gave for George Huddleston Jr., was given for me on Claremont Avenue on the south side. And the great crowd had gathered. Lovely home, lovely people, lovely crowd, probably 50 to 100 people were present. Night before the election. The advertising was there, it was paid for, the TV was paid for, and so all the people had gathered, and naturally I was up. And so what happened, the TV station mislaid the program the night before the election.
This would have been a program already on film, in the can, as they say.
Yeah.
And somehow it just never played.
Just never played. And catching on very quickly, because I had well in mind the timing, as did my campaign manager or managers.
Now this was Chuck Morgan and...
Well, I think it was otherwise that night.
Oh, okay.
Because I had different ones.
Right. Okay.
It was at the home of Jones Price and Katie Price. Great people. Anyway.
So the TV station, the time
run.
arrives for the ad to run, and it doesn't run.
It doesn't run. And after that election, he won. And I had a long conference with one of my top campaign people, whose name I have mentioned earlier. Wasn't Chuck. Advised me to forget it. The campaign's over. Forget it, Tom. Go about your business now. You came home for two purposes: to run for mayor and or practice law. Start practicing law. Well, I wanted to sue the television station, to the point that I called the general manager, and he was aghast that I was considering suit, and just saying, don't do that, Tom. We've got a long, I remember this conversation, we've got a long time to stay in this city. You theoretically have a long time. You will be successful. I have a long time. I think I'll be successful. But if you open up this issue, it could ruin both of us. And anyway, he just begged me not to file suit. That, together with the conference I had with my close friend and supporter, telling me to practice law, forget it. Caused me to think hard, and I did, and I didn't see it.
There were two TV stations in the city at the time, two primary ones, Channel 6 and Channel 13. Could you say which one of those this was?
I don't mind, 6.
Yeah. 6 was also apparently associated with Will Connor.
I didn't put that in the mix at that point in time, but that is true.
Yeah. Let's also, there's another more famous incident, I guess, during the course of this runoff campaign. There's a couple of things that happen. There's an event of national prominence that occurs on Mother's Day afternoon, May 14th. The Freedom Riders come to Birmingham and are severely beaten because the police had been removed from the station to allow the Klan time to come in and beat the Freedom Riders. This was arranged ahead of time, apparently by Bull Connor. That event seemed to mobilize some of the very forces that would have rather seen you in office, it seems to me, at least by virtue of what was said on the front pages of the paper immediately following the Freedom Riders incident. And considering people like Sidney Smyer, who came back to Birmingham from a trip abroad where he had seen the news about this incident all the way over on the other side of the world in Tokyo, Japan, and recognized that Birmingham was going to be viewed negatively by people around the world unless something was done. So here's an incident that, on the face of it at least, would seem like it might assist you. Did you get any overtures from people like Smyer or people from the newspaper, for example, Vincent Townsend, that would suggest that they were now leaning more in your camp?
At what point in time?
We're talking about in the week or so, 10 days or so following the incident at the bus station. So that was in May 14th.
This was followed later by what I put in the paper.
Now I'm wondering, I'm trying to resolve for myself an issue that has concerned me, didn't make any sense to me, and that is that on the one hand, the Birmingham News was editorializing about how bad this was and the fact that there were no police there and that Birmingham needed to work to change what was going on in the city. And on the other hand, apparently a smear campaign being engineered against you by operatives working for the Birmingham News, taking a picture of you shaking hands with a black man outside of City Hall. And the person who took that picture, it appears, was in the employ of Vincent Townsend, in the Birmingham News. So I'm just trying to reconcile this in my mind to see why there would have been some effort to defeat you, in kind of underground effort, if you will. At the same time, on the surface, it would appear that certain very powerful people would have wanted to see a change occur. And I'm trying to see if there's any substance to my sense that this is, kind of contradictory or paradoxical.
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. There was a dual purpose being put in place, and I was the victim of the dual purpose, and it was implemented by an extremely influential high official, one who had the ability, the position to implement such a dastardly scheme. And I don't feel that it's proper for me to name a name at this point unless it's totally off the record, because it's the only aspect in the person's life that would besmirch his name. He's no longer with us, and I just don't feel that I would feel too right after this passage of time, though I would be happy to, knowing you for what you are, to tell you off the record who the person was, or persons.
Okay. I'll respect that, and I think for the purposes of this, we'll go on and we will try to, we'll figure out a way to get the information off the record. I think I'd like to have that.
I'll be happy to tell you, Doctor.
Okay. So let's talk about the particular incident that I'm referring to. You were called to a meeting at City Hall.
That's correct.
Ostensibly to meet with Mr. Connor, to talk over with him some, you're the leading candidate to become mayor. There's some sense that he's offering an olive branch, if you will, or at least as an overture to you to see, how he could work with you if you should become mayor. Am I characterizing that correctly?
Sure.
Okay.
You are.
So you're approached, you're called to this meeting. You have the meeting with Mr. Connor at City Hall. Say something about the nature of that meeting, just briefly, in terms of, was it a cordial meeting?
On the surface, yes.
Did he seem serious about?
Well, it must be understood in responding that I did not know Mr. Connor that well at that point in time.
Right.
I had been at the university when he was elected and reelected time and time again as police commissioner.
Right.
I'd been out of school, but in the federal system for a couple of years, and with Mr. Ingram for about 8 months, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and then the federal system.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been out a couple of years, or a little more than a couple of years, I would think. And so I just didn't know. I'd had no real reason to know Mr. Connor other than what I read in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
I had never met him. When I went to meet with him on that occasion.
Okay, so this was the first time personally
Mm-hmm.
that you had ever sat down with him or had
Mhm.
any kind of discussion
Mm-hmm.
with him.
Yes.
Do you recall who called and asked for the meeting? Did he call personally?
No.
So this was somebody working on his behalf who called and
Yes.
asked him. Do you remember who that
Well,
was?
he was. I don't know that I knew he was working for Mr. Connor,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the way things rather turned out.
Okay. And so, who was this individual that called and said, "Would you be willing to meet with Mr. Connor?"
We're getting on that dangerous ground again.
Okay, all right. So you were called. You responded positively. You went to City Hall and at the appointed time and met
Mhm.
with Mr. Connor.
And at the behest of the gentleman that I referred to.
Yeah, and so the meeting seems to be sort of perfunctory, not particularly serious. In
Well,
terms of really
it-
actually talking
it-
through.
It was serious. The intent on my part was quite serious.
Yes.
But I had a lot to gain and not a lot to lose. So I went in to see him at a given time, I think 10 o'clock in the morning, and just was ushered right in by a Mrs. Smith, as I recall the name, his secretary. Went in, and Mr. Connor was seated. He'd have a seat, Tom. And if you recall how he spoke, rather brusque, and have a seat, Tom. And I said, "How are you this morning, Commissioner?" "I'm fine, I'm fine. What can I do for you?" That sort of approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, I just wanted to drop by and say that I fully believe, Commissioner, that when I'm elected mayor, that you and I won't have any problems. We can get along. We can work through our problems on behalf of our city." And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. And I'll tell you what's going to happen here. And then he went on to outline that which happened just a few days later. The bus drivers and the bus, the terminal.
Freedom
station.
Riders.
Freedom Rider,
Yeah.
right. And he told me all of that and said he said the FBI was in on it, and which they denied later.
Right.
So,
Well, their informant, Gary Thomas Rowe, was there.
right.
Yeah.
At the bus station.
Right.
Right. So anyway, after just a short period of time, he convinced me it was going to happen. And so I left politely. And as I left, I walked down the steps between the city hall and the courthouse. Just the way it's situated now, those steps,
Right.
one on each side.
Right there by the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I walked down the right side, the side adjacent to the mayor's office, as it still exists, I believe. And walked down the steps. As I got to the curbstone leading toward the park, a voice behind me said, "Mr. King, Mr. King," several times. And at that point in time, I had been shaking hands with everybody I could get a hold of, you know.
Right.
And so I turned around with my hand out, and this big guy, I say big guy, he was well stacked, sort of like Andrew Zhao last Saturday. And he grabbed my hand and held it to where I knew something was going on. Knew something was going on.
Right.
Well, that just didn't happen in that day and age, because
Right.
you didn't go around, because he was a black guy.
Right. And this would not be that common for a black man to walk up to a white man on the street in Birmingham.
Not common at all.
And grab his hand in a friendly fashion.
Wouldn't even be common today.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly wasn't then.
Mm-hmm.
In the heat of a mayor's campaign,
Right.
it had been already, well, there was skullduggery apparent going on with all the charges made against me.
Yeah. So that was your immediate thought, was that?
Yes, it was my immediate thought.
Yeah. So were there
it
any?
didn't take me any time at all.
Yeah. Did you exchange any words with this fellow, or?
I was astonished, and I didn't. I just tried to get away. And he held it long enough.
Uh-huh.
And
then he just walked off.
yeah, he did a quick dodge. And I was, as I say, in a state of astonishment. And so just a couple of days later, my campaign, through one of my supporters, who was very active politically and a labor leader, picked up and learned that they had a picture, and that it was taken from the mayor's office, which tied in with the facts I knew.
Mm-hmm.
They had a picture of me, in other words, shaking hands with a black man.
Right. Right. And this picture would have to have been taken by somebody who was rather adept at this sort of thing. I mean,
Right.
It had to have been a telephoto lens. It had to have been set up ahead of time
Right,
to have been in that area.
right.
Yeah.
And he would have had to have a certain purpose to be in that area.
Sure.
And so it all fit. The circumstances fit what they were up to. And
This is fascinating in the light of what you just said about your conversation with Bull Connor, because the meeting and the picture take place before the Freedom Riders come. Connor has foreknowledge. He's already told you
that
what's
they were
going to
coming.
happen.
Yeah,
So here is an incident which in some measure is going to be created by Connor.
absolutely,
Clearly to influence this race.
absolutely.
Created by Connor in that sense, and then secondly created by having a black person shake your hand so that that particular matter of race could be played directly against you in the campaign.
Exactly.
So this is
Exactly.
a well thought out strategy.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure, again, this was not something that the full impact of which you could have discerned at the time. That you knew something was amiss, but you couldn't quite. I'm not sure you had time to develop a strategy to counteract it, I guess is my question.
Well, an effort was made to counteract it, but it was an unsuccessful effort. Yeah, it was pretty well figured out by my campaign. Those involved with it, I shared with my close supporters, some of whom I have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a Sunday night meeting all through that campaign, at which all of those that I have mentioned and many others were invitees and were brought into the campaign as the campaign broadened. And I became the leader, particularly in the first go-around. It broadened even more. And so on that, I've forgotten what my point was, quite frankly.
Well, I think this had to do with how you might develop a strategy to counteract.
Right, I shared it with all these many people.
Yeah.
And they thought that it was too good to be true, except against our interest and for the interest of the opponent.
Yeah. Do you recall how many days after the Freedom Riders incident that the election took place? I'm wanting to say it was 2 weeks or so.
About.
Yeah.
I don't think quite 2 weeks, Doctor.
Okay.
But
so again, the
I'm
timing,
sure if you, I'm sure the Birmingham News still has that.
Yeah. Tom's saying 9 days.
9.
So
He's
again,
done a lot of groundwork for me.
so that there really would not have been a lot of time to.
Or it may have been 3 days.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Yeah. We're talking about a Tuesday, the incident occurring on a Sunday. In any case, there's precious little time.
I think the article that I caused to be put in the paper appeared on Sunday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and the election was on Tuesday.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
Very little time.
Right.
But I put it in the paper. It was a full-page article that I had the privilege of paying for. I wasn't given the first break by anybody. And paid for it, and then it cost me.
And the ad, what was the
So
ad
that-
itself?
My story that
Mhm.
I've just gone over with you in far less detail.
With the photograph?
Yeah, with the photograph.
Right. Yeah. And
And I'm sure that's still in the annals of the Birmingham News.
oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, and one could look it up, as they
Yeah.
say. So the election was held, and you lost.
Mhm.
You remember the margin?
I had, as I recall it now, I had a 3,000 vote lead the first go around, and then I lost by 2,000.
And with
Now that's the way I recall it.
okay, and again, the record is what the record is.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember the turnout being comparable, or was it greater the second time?
I think it was comparable.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's a detail I've lost over time.
Sure.
But, I think so.
Yeah. Now, and we've got only about 10 minutes left, so I want to raise this question with you. Would have been very easy, given what happened to you, for you to have said, "The hell with this place. I'm not gonna, put any more effort in. I'm being treated like this and so forth." And yet you didn't do that. You came back, made a decision to, once the city government changed and became a mayor-council form, you ran once more for mayor. And perhaps on another occasion we could talk about that. But you continued to be active in public life. And I just want you to say a word about, in a way, I guess, what prompted you, what motivated you to continue. You went on to a successful career as a state senator, representing Jefferson County in the legislature. You've obviously engendered public service in your family with your sons. You have, I guess, still some hope that the community can be better. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to what would you attribute that? Why would you not have just given up?
Well, I think that my family is the primary reason. I think we are a people, a family, that is loyal. And this may sound self-serving, so be it if so. I don't think it will be with the present forum. But I think people are made up almost from the beginning to be loyal people who stick by their beliefs. And I think I'm the beneficiary of that type of family. And it never occurred to me, really, other than to have it voiced by others, why didn't you leave? That I would do such a thing, that I would leave. I had gone to school throughout my life in Birmingham, Alabama. I had gone to the University of Alabama and had been honored by being elected president of the student body. I had come back here and had then been elected no, I don't guess I was. I started to say elected State Democratic Executive Committee. That was later. But I had been honored by the congressman to go to Washington, spend 6 of the happiest periods of my life and my wife's life, and Tom's. I don't know how much he remembers of that, but he remembers a good bit. But we were very happy in Washington. Norma really wanted to stay up there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I wanted to come back and have a career.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a part of it, too. I wanted my career to be in my hometown. And I wanted to contribute to this community, not some other strange community. Didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very easy thing. As I say, I never gave it any serious thought about leaving here. Never.
Were you involved at all in the?
My father was circuit judge.
Yeah.
I needed to stay here and help him if he needed it.
Yeah.
If I could help. Didn't know whether I could at that point.
Yeah. Were you involved with with the effort to change the form of government?
No. I certainly favored the change, but I was not involved in it. That was through the efforts of David Vann, and I believe George Peach Taylor was very active.
Yes. Did you know George?
Oh, he was very active in my campaign. I should have mentioned George in that small group that I did mention.
Where did his nickname come from?
Peach.
Peach.
It's his name.
Okay, that's his middle name.
Yeah.
I thought it was a nickname. Appreciate you straightening that out.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
I think that's right.
Yeah, I just had always.
Good man. Oh, what a peach.
Yeah.
Really.
Appropriately named.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was also Abe Berkowitz and some others who put that campaign together very successfully, and it was apparently supported heartily by Sid Smyer and some others who decided that Bull Connor and company were not the best folks to govern Birmingham. Right. But you were on the sidelines in that particular effort.
Yes.
But then once it was...
Interestingly, Sid Smyer did not support me.
Did y'all ever talk about that?
We were both ATOs. He went to Auburn, I went to Alabama. Mm-hmm. And he was many years my senior.
Yes.
We had, during the first campaign, 61 campaign, there was a get-together at the Highland Terrace Gardens, I think the name of the place was, of ATOs. Mr. Smyer was there. I was there. First campaign. And I'll always remember this, he did not only not support me, but he ignored me at that meeting.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Now, his son and I always have been good friends, but that made no difference to Mr. Smyer.
Mm-hmm.
Sid Jr. is my good friend today. If I saw him, I never see him anymore.
It strikes me then that the epiphany, I guess, which he had in Tokyo, seeing the Freedom Riders picture on the front page of the Tokyo paper, which has been widely recounted as
yes, I've read that.
That must have truly been that dramatic a shift in his perceptions.
Perhaps.
Well, it just would follow because otherwise, I think he probably would have already been looking for alternatives to Connor.
I would think so.
But that he came back, and again, the time frame was such there wasn't enough time to actually mobilize anti-Connor forces, if you want to use that term, to mobilize those forces before the election in '61. That in some ways the die had already been cast before anybody could change things, is the way it looks now.
Yeah. Well, it would appear to me, having been there, that, and I have nothing against Mr. Smyer, except he ignored me one time, you know. Mm-hmm. But which I do remember. I'm built that way too. Mm-hmm. But I lost my thought again.
Well, I mean, I think you're making the point that we're really concluding here is that Smyer and others like Smyer were not giving much thought prior to 1961 to
You're
there
right.
being some significant change in the city.
Right.
And if there were, I mean, if
think
you
you're right.
represented, for example, an opportunity for change, he wasn't eager to pursue it.
I think you're exactly right.
Yeah. And again, I think that fits with what is now becoming, I guess, sort of the standard history of Birmingham, that it took a series of dramatic shocks to the system
Right.
to really cause the city to seriously question the path it was on and whether that path needed to be altered.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, Tom,
Your perception is very sound, and I've learned anew, I guess, that it's always been true in your case, probably.
well, having studied all of this and researched it for about 25 years, I would hope I've learned something in the effort.
No, you have.
Let me just appreciate you again so much for sitting, talking about this. I know that from a personal standpoint, this has not always been so easy
I know.
for
I
you.
know it hadn't.
Yeah.
Well, it hadn't for you either.
Well, but I'm thinking about, just again, your obvious dedication to the place that you care so much about, and your obvious desire to serve that place and provide it with some leadership. And I happen to have been old enough in '61 to notice, what was going on, and to notice that my parents, who were supporters of yours and this particular campaign, were deeply disappointed by the way things turned out. So I've always remembered that and carried that with me. And
I've always felt that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt at all that part of the reason that I have spent as much time as I've spent studying Birmingham and trying to understand what happened to the city in the early 1960s began with my association with you and my parents' association with you in the campaign. And it's been good for me to spend some time with you and talking about this.
It's been good for me, too.
Yeah, just thank you so much.
It's really been good for me.
Tom, thank you
Been good for Tom.
for bringing him down here. Tell you what,
Been
I'm
good for Tom.
Certainly has.
Well, I want to repeat what a strong feeling I've always had for your mother and your father. And I was deeply touched when the accident occurred with your dad.
Well,
Really was.
Yeah.
Hey,
that was a hard time, and
yeah, I know.
but things are better, and we appreciate your.
I
concern.
have,
I'm going to turn this
Sure.
off. You go ahead.
been able to keep in touch, stay in touch with